AI and design with heart and soul. I would like to introduce my co-host and myself. I'm Cantera. I am a senior AI experience designer, and nothing I say is anything to do with where I work or reflects only my opinions and not that of my employer. I have to say that because I work with an army of attorneys, and would like to introduce my co-host Mahnaz. Hi Mahnaz, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
So excited for this.
Yeah, me too. We got some big dogs in the house today. So I'm gonna let them self-introduce. Anais, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name's Anais Wittrock. It's a mouthful of a name, but I'm super excited for this discussion. I'm a senior product designer. I've made digital and physical products, and I was actually an intensive care and sports medicine lead. And so my passion to dive into product was because I was extremely frustrated. My patients were extremely frustrated, and so I was super excited to do something about it in the digital product space.
Welcome. Thanks for coming. Thomas, you want to go next?
I'm Thomas. I've been designing things for about 3 decades. I don't look at it like work. I love it. I love to work long hours. I don't really care about things like burnout. I don't subscribe to any of that stuff because I'm having fun. I can't believe people pay me to learn stuff and to solve problems. It's actually awesome. And the truth is, I would probably do it for free if they stopped paying me.
Well, you could send me your pay and do it for free. And Tony.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. So Tony Moura, my background spans same thing, about 3 decades, a little over 3 decades, I believe. I don't know. At some point, you kind of stop counting of user experience, design, architecture. I still call myself in some cases UX architect. Now it's UX engineer because I combine basically design and everything that I've done in the past with AI.
Awesome. So today's topic is sort of a hot one. I find it very easy to push people's buttons when we talk about the future of UI in the age of AI. You talk about Figma being dead and people freak out. And I mean, I find it kind of hilarious. Not suffering. Suffering isn't hilarious, but the unwillingness to pivot, that's like not being open, right? Like I pride myself on being very open. So the first piece of that I'd like to untangle with you all is what are you seeing in the real world trend wise as far as UI goes? Like I know everybody knows I am the voice person. I believe that we are going to talk to our technology. I believe in Jarvis. I believe that the stuff that Tony Stark has is going to be in your kitchen. And I would love to hear what you all think.
Can I go?
Sure.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think regarding voice AI, we're going to lean a lot more towards natural real-time conversations, generative AI enhancements, voice assistants. They're becoming way more conversational, and they're starting to sound, real. They're starting to sound like humans. They're going to be more personalized and allow people to self-serve a lot more. I think multimodal integration. I have to say that, or Yadi will get mad at us. Multimodal
She's
integration.
Right. She's right.
Combining voice with other modalities, you know what I mean? Text, gestures, and all of that for richer interaction and better stuff, and latency reduction. There's a lot of different advancements right now in our processing speeds and edge computing, and they're starting to minimize delays in interactions. And we right before you went live, we were actually talking about some of that stuff and some of the stuff that IBM and NVIDIA and a bunch of other brands are doing. But with regard to the conversational AI, we're past chatbots. Like the idea that, you know, we start talking about this stuff online and some dumbass always invariably says something along the lines about how much they hate chatbots on websites. And they're talking about menu bots. We all know, everyone on this call knows what they're talking about, right? But they don't really grasp the concept of like multi-bot ecosystems and like having emotionally intelligent interactions. And you know what I mean? Like there's a lot coming down the pipe and there's a lot happening right now. And I think there's more to get excited about than to fear.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll piggyback off of that. What I'm seeing in the market currently is instead of AI assistant, it's more of an AI agent, and they're actually quite expensive. So I think like adoption for that is a little bit slower. But you know, instead of you booking like a hotel, you booking your trip, you have an AI agent that's able to do all of that stuff for you, appointment booking, like an actual assistant that's able to execute at the human level.
Right. It's interesting because one of the things is like I gave you guys earlier was like, you know, if anybody wants to is to try something that'll blow your mind, is go to sesame.com, go to the demo, and then go play and just talk to you for about 3 minutes. If you don't register with Miles or Maya, right? And actually close your eyes. And if you do it, you won't realize that you're talking to in a sense an LLM on the back end, right? So it's closing the gap. And a matter of fact, what's interesting, as I was telling you guys earlier, is that I designed this whole SaaS solution. That SaaS solution actually can be run not with a chatbot, but when it first launches, there is no navigation because I want the users to be able to actually come in and just interact with it. And there's actually, and speaking of agents, there's an agent that greets that persona. There's 3 separate personas. I built 3 separate agents that actually kind of greet them. But I even went further because I don't call them agents because I gave them first and last names. I built personas of them. They have backstories. I built them as like digital people. And if I said, if this was a person to do this job, who would they be, right? No joke. They even have information as far as demographic information, what they would look like and hairstyle and everything else, because I wanted to literally go into Midjourney and create a headshot. And then I thought it would be hilarious to actually go and create a LinkedIn profile for them that they can interact with, right? So it's like, hey, if this thing ever launches and it's like, Tony, where did you come out with 15 people? Hey, yeah, they're all here. But it's like that is starting to happen now. And the latency that you were talking about, if you will almost hear no latency at sesame.com, right? And there's tools like, you know, Anais and some others, probably like 11 Labs and etc. But there's still, it's got that latency of literally just traveling through the pipe. It's got to go from here, it does what it does, and it's got to send it back, right? It might be, you know, a second, but you still notice it, right? And it's not what a human would do.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Speechmatics. Speechmatics, I think, is doing a crazy amazing job in the space.
I want to hear what you say after you literally play with Sesame. I literally want to hear what you think about it.
I have the window open for when we're done. But I think you came upon something I never put a word to yet, is digital people, which I don't know how I feel about that. I'm one for assistants, not replacements. But I always hated the word agent. Like if you say agent to me, I picture like a big black SUV rolling up and a bunch of FBI agents getting out. And
Agent Smith. Mr.
Yes, I always hated that
Yeah.
term. I had said it. Braden Ream is the CEO of VoiceFlow, and I had said that to him like 3 years ago. Ugh, I hate the word agent. Find something else, but it's stuck. Digital people freaks me out a little bit. I think you're right. I just don't know how I feel about it.
A lot of people think I'm crazy, honestly, because they're like, you gave your agents, you built. I'm like, look, I'm a UX guy, right? So I think of them as personas, and I built it from the guise of a persona. Like, hey, here's this job, here's the persona that I see kind of doing that job. Here's what they would do. Here's who they would talk to. Here's how they would share information. So it was easier for me as the creator to think of it not as technology, but how people in an office would talk and communicate. It's in my mind, what I basically did was took an office building and took the roof off and looked at the ants and how would the people move around and communicate with each other. And those are the agents or the people that I built and gave them first and last names. I mean, Felix Hawthorne is my CFO, and they talk to other people. You know, it's kind of funny because I'm like, I call them as people. That's just the way I kind of think about it.
Interesting. I think that's gonna spark. I always say you know, AI is the spark, you are the fire is one of my cheesy one-liners. But I think that term digital person is going to spark a fire in general.
Absolutely.
A good fire or a bad fire?
Well, it's always both, right?
Right.
Like the shirt says. Yeah. Depends on who you're
Be
talking to.
careful.
Yeah, I think the therapists out in the world, and I agree with them, would probably not love that. You know, I some people really love talking emotional things with their AI. It feels wrong to me, but I'm not one to push my stuff on others. But I think that one's going to cause as much controversy as Figma is dead or any that. And I think that leads me into kind of another question of job wise, we know things are not great and wildly changing. I have been screaming about conversation design for like 3 years. Rupa Chaturvedi is one of my mentors. She did a post. I saw that post. It was right before ChatGPT launched. So I started deep diving. I just knew she was right. And I think I know conversation designers are in high demand, and there aren't a lot of us. There was just a big sort of survey and outreach to find us all, and there's like less than 250 on the planet. So my vote is definitely for voice and conversation design, but I'm curious what everybody thinks. The next round of hiring, the next job kind of titles, what is everybody's opinion on what's happening work wise?
I'd love to take that one. Oh, sorry. I think ethical design, because I come from a medical background, and there is a barrier to entry for these jobs as far as having ethics courses. You go through so much rigorous work, and I haven't yet seen a morality clause for product launches, especially with AI. We're just moving so fast and it's so cool, but it's not yet regulated in a manner that helps us humans in the future. So I think that's where a lot of that fear comes from. And what I would love to see, and I'm hoping that this is hitting the market sooner than later, is being less of, a design soldier and more of, I guess, like a general of ethics, someone that can say, hey, like, I really think, the chatbot or the humanoid is wonderful. It's awesome. It can help you with daily tasks. But how do we gate this in a way that doesn't hurt human evolution? So I'm thinking of like, someone that's helping you take care of your kids, will connecting with, like that robot, the voice persona or person, will that harm them in creating human-like connections in the future? And
Can I add something?
Please.
Like I was thinking about like personalization, like before was like choosing light mode or over dark mode, or like add this feature or not, choose the theme. And right now it's like we're getting deeper into personalization, and like I'm wondering how much deep would be okay for people, and is there a line that we need to be careful about it to not passing, or like what do you think?
I think everyone should see this movie on Netflix called Companion.
Okay. Oh, I think I saw that.
Yeah, so the ad.
Watch it.
But I do think money will come first. As always, money will win.
Of course. And you were just asking about, like, you started off the conversation saying, what about jobs and where the job's going to be? Right now, one of the biggest, I think, most innovative things, and we've talked about this, Ann, is no UI, invisible and intuitive, like contextually aware systems that integrate into different environments and they anticipate your needs without explicit commands. Like they just know what you need. Like that's coming. That's
Brain AI has been selling appless phones in other countries for like 2 years already.
right.
Yeah.
And if you look at what's happening in automotive and to Anais's comment, healthcare and retail, like in automotive, like Mercedes, Benz, Volkswagen, a bunch of people, Rivian with Amazon, they're putting all these conversational AI interactions into the cars, man, so that you can drive the car, you can navigate, you can tell it what to do, just like Alexa. And healthcare, there's so much conversational AI that's happening for like, patient engagement and triage and appointment scheduling. And to what Tony was saying earlier, the thing that kind of freaked me out the most was starting to hear about like these different the different types of chat and voice that's happening with like mental health. Like you're getting therapy in a box, and people are literally chatting with AI and getting better and getting more help than they would if they were talking to an actual, therapist.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, Tom, because the reason being is that and I mentioned sesame.com, right? But there was somebody that went on there to try and mess it up intentionally. And they were like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to sound kind of depressed, and I'm going to mention that I'm depressed. And then they were like, I'm not going to say anything else during the conversation. And what's interesting is that, and you guys can try it all yourselves, but what was interesting is that the AI on the back end and then the voice that came in actually lowered its tone to meet that person. And then it was like almost whispering. It was like, okay,
it got small. It got small.
Yeah, it was like, hey, we'll just sit here and I'll listen, and I'm here and we want to talk. And it became empathetic. And it was like, holy shit, that was impressive, because I was like watching it, right? And it was just like, so now would you feel comfortable opening up and talking to it, honestly, because you knew it wasn't a live person on the other end that might judge you, but just somebody that could listen?
Exactly.
Like,
getting rid of
much
that
bigger thing, right?
Yeah, getting rid of that bias. So I currently work in the EAP and mental health space, and one of the bigger things with patients is that bias, being afraid of judgment, and having that taken away. Would that improve someone's mental health? We don't know yet, right? We don't have enough like research to back that up, but presume that, to Thomas's point, this could really help a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking into the ether and it just goes, right? And you're just getting something off your chest, you don't feel you're going to get judged for what you say.
Right.
In some cases, let's say how crazy it might be, right? Now, yeah, on the other end, if it hears something that's like really alarming, hey, I'm going to murder 18 people, it's like, okay, maybe on the back end I should call somebody, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's where I could see where the ethics would come in, because this person has said they're going to do this or whatever, right? Yeah, but it's kind of like, it's interesting, because when I was watching this person talk to Sesame and they didn't say anything, all of a sudden Sesame would go for, you would think the AI would shut up and just not say anything, right? It'd be dead air. But then it would go on for a couple of seconds and it's like, hey, I'm here to listen. If you want to talk. And I was like, whoa, this is really strange, right? But I would find it fascinating. It was really, really cool. I mean, for my SaaS solution, I was even, some of the agents that I created were like, I want them to actually call using Twilio and actually calling a person that registers. Hey, I just want to welcome you to this, to Vetted, blah, 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 blah. Thanks for coming on. Hey, let's book your appointment. And I was just like, but it's kind of interesting, because as a designer and also as a human, I'm like, how would people respond to that, right? So would they respond to it or would they not? And then, Anne, kind of going back to your thing, is where our jobs are going. It's kind of like, what's interesting is there's the immediate and the long term. Some of the stuff that you guys are talking about is long term, right? Is like where we see the long arc of things are getting, and you're trying to help that arc work, right? But as an example, I just talked to a team of 60 people at a design agency in Denmark, like literally last week for 2 hours. And they were just literally saying, how do we take, what tools are you using, Tony, to build your solution and build other stuff? And how do we think differently of just being able to go from concept to some code? So right now, I wouldn't even say infancy. It's more like kind of embryo, where they're where some agencies of 60 people are going, how do we even start, right?
Right.
So it's like there's the starting point and then there's the arc at some point, right? And it's like, I love the movie Atlas, right? I'm a sci-fi movie guy, but the movie Atlas, right, with Jennifer Lopez. Okay, it didn't do great, but if you're a technology person and you see how she interacts with the AI on board the mech suit, it starts out very cold and then the AI gets empathetic and very humanizing. But it's interesting because it's combining both modalities. She's talking to it 90 something percent of the time, but they're still floating orbs. So I think at some point, humans will always, you can't separate the two. They're going to want something to kind of focus on, right? And kind of see, even if it's kind of just like right now, the very arbitrary, right, in a UI. But they're always going to want to see something that they're talking to, right? The other thing I was thinking about is there's an inherent problem. You can build the best, let's say, AI assistant for a human or for a user, but if it can't go into my car with me, if it can't transfer to somewhere else,
Right.
you have a standard that everybody's going to have to go, hey, this assistant can then move through systems as a standard.
Right. I wrote a whole article about the kit.
Yeah.
Right. You'll have your ring, your watch, your glasses, your phone, your little earpiece, whatever,
Yeah.
like, and it will travel with you in your kit. And I think that, especially like if you work, like Anais, you've worked in the hospital, like for a nurse is going to need that earpiece because she's in this wild environment and she'll need sort of an intimacy with her assistant, which is actually something I've been building with my friend Mir Hicks. We've been working on a multi-agent hospital nurses assistant, and it's just one of those things that I really feel like what Tony was talking about therapy wise. I'm like very much a mama bear. I wouldn't want my kid to be in an unsupervised AI therapy without a human in the loop. And I think human in the loop.
Maybe not a child for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
that's
think
different.
human in the loop is one of those jobs that's coming.
Right.
I know IKEA, what they did, they took all of their call takers and turned them into designers.
Right.
I like that. The idea of upskilling people to things like human in the loop. I think bot optimization experts are going to be enormous.
I want a personal HAL 9000, Tony. Yes, Dave. I'm opening the hatch now, Dave.
So, but for me, it's like I said, there's so many people right now. It's kind of interesting, right? With the advent and kind of digressing a little bit, seeing where UX was at, and we had tried so hard to get business to even understand and improve our damn value that we were trying to sell ourselves every 2 weeks, so we would keep getting a paycheck, right? And a lot of times you were an army of one, and in literally a sea of developers, and you couldn't design fast enough that they couldn't consume, that they could build, right? And then they were like, we're waiting on you, right? So then you had to justify every 2 weeks. So the big thing is we were pushing, and business started to adapt to it. I want to say started. They started getting smart to it. They started hiring bigger teams, right, of UX people. And they started seeing some of the value, and they started seeing some of the research, because we'd been evangelizing, hey, if we do this now, downstream, it's less money, it's more cost effective, you build people. We all know this, right? But all of a sudden it was the, academia suddenly got wind of it and said, hey, we can start pumping out a lot of people. And what's the whole thing got watered down, right? And even going back, if you said you were a graphics designer, you were typically on a Mac, and that was a $3,000 system when everything else was like $500, and they were like, holy shit, that was a barrier to entry, right? You had to pay to jump that hoop to get into it. Right. And then when you were like, hey, I do 3D animation work, holy shit, that software is like 10 grand, right? Or whatever. It was there were barriers to entry that filtered out everybody that, I don't want to say shouldn't have been doing it.
Right. This is the best comment.
But it was like a filter, right?
Yeah.
But then you had boot camps that suddenly sprung up, and you could be a designer in 6 weeks. Hey, right? And then it was just like certifications and everything else. And the market got flooded with a tidal wave of people of people that are like, and it's not that they should not be doing it. I'm not saying that, but the barriers to entry were almost, not even almost non-existent. They were non-existent in some cases, right? You could take a free certification from Google. Ironically enough, they wouldn't even hire you if you took their own certification.
I have that certification.
Right. So the thing is, like, you could take that, and then the false narrative was, oh, you're a designer at the end of this. Well, shit, those of us that have been doing it for a decade, right? I didn't consider myself a senior designer until I'd been 12 years in, where I'm like, okay, now I think I've got something of value to say to somebody that is meaningful, right? You've got people that'll go out and like, yeah, I'm a senior designer. Where have you been at? I've been at 2 startups, and I had 4 people underneath of me in total. And you're like, no, you're not as senior because you got the title.
You're talking about senior juniors or junior seniors.
Well, the big thing to me is it's all about the history of what you have underneath of you. It's like, look, you wouldn't want somebody that's like, hey, I just came out of residency for neurosurgery, but I'm going to operate on your mom right now, right?
Yeah.
You'd be like, no, I want the person that's almost about ready to retire, that's done 1,500 of these. Like, I want that person, right? So it's not that I'm making the argument. It's not that some juniors aren't really, really, really skilled. They are. But it's like everything got watered down to where like everybody could do it, right? And those barrier to entries weren't there anymore. And we know, all of us on this call know that that's not the case. That's not the case, right?
I love everything that you just said, Tony. This industry is filled with a lot of hacks and well-spoken idiots and cockroaches, and AI as a giant can of Raid.
I wonder, okay, so my question is then, right, I think the barrier to entry now is even less, right? Because I can go, on cloud, I can go chat GPT, I can make a cool graphic, then quickly put it into Figma, quickly transit to Framer, boom. But I'm wondering, barrier to entry is less now, and what would constitute a senior, a junior, director level at this point?
Yeah,
because yourselves, I've had like director level folks that have had less experience than I have.
Right.
And so I understand like that's another discussion, but yeah, it's a little tough because you're like, oh, like, okay.
I think that people our age, I think that people that have been doing it for 20 or 30 years, they're in a unique position right now to wield AI and to be a hell of a lot better at it than anybody who's just now entering into the game. People who have lots of experience, like the stuff that Tony was saying, that none of that is edgy or even crazy. It's just true. And so a lot of people that are in their early 50s, especially women, they're leaving the business and they're walking away from it because they're tired of all the garbage. And the thing is I think that they should just hang on. I think that they should hang on and they should start mastering these tools because they know the terminology. They know how to, they could write out prompting for prototypes that are going to be way better than most young designers.
Yeah. It's like, I couldn't design the SaaS. There's no way I couldn't design the SaaS solution that I've designed in less than 3 months if I hadn't done other products before. There's just no way I could have done it. I had, access to the best AI in the world, but if I didn't know how to manipulate it and work with it and have that conversation, and that's where the history comes in. That's where the credibility comes in. That's where I'm leveraging like hundreds of projects and seen things that didn't work or seen things that worked. And I'm like, let's do this here. Right. So it's like, even though it's my own solution, have I done user research? Yeah, very, loosely, but it's because I'm relying on, I've already talked to 5,000 people in the past and I kind of know what works and what doesn't, right? So it's like, if you don't have that to rely on, even if somebody gives you the best AI in the world, it doesn't mean you're going to get something out of it.
Right.
So could you potentially get some pretty pictures? Sure, of course. Could you go in and create, hey, I want this? And even if it was a standard graphic design, it's kind of funny when everybody's like, oh, look, ChatGPT can create these graphic designs and they can take a bottle and put it here and everything else. I'm like, yeah, but if you've never in your life taken Photoshop and manipulated a bottle and put it here and done this and had the layout and the symmetry and had to think of that, you wouldn't even know how to put that together. You just like give it here. And when they give you something back, you're like, yeah, that looks good. Because and it's not your fault. It's just a limited amount of knowledge, right? So
foundations. No foundations.
Yeah. So
you need that foundational information. You need to understand photography and you need to understand how light works. Yeah.
I think that'll happen
though. More valuable, actually.
Besides predatory boot camps, the wages and cost of living in this country are so brutal that people are like, oh, a sit down job where I can make $100,000 a year. Let me give it a shot. I could do it in 18 weeks.
You're right. That is a lot of people were allured by that. I've said this
because
many
there's not
times.
options out in the world.
Right.
Like,
If you're a barista, if you're doing hair, if you're, you're working at a tire
teachers,
shop.
not where I live. School teachers here make a good living, but generally school teachers, right? So one of the reasons why Mahnaz and I became friends is because she's the hardest working, most brilliant junior I've seen out there. Always hustling, always hands, and that's how you have to be. Like, you can't just boot camp.
Oh yeah.
You have to
Autodidact.
I mean, 7 days a week she was at it, and I was like, this woman is like my kindred spirit. Like, always, like, the hardest working junior I knew, super talented, and that's how we connected. Like, I connected to her because I saw that in her. You don't see that.
No.
Right.
Often.
No.
Rare.
It's like I literally, it's kind of funny because what you mentioned is like when I used to tell people, I'm like, I eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. It's from the time that I get up to the time that I go to bed. I'm in an airplane and I'm redesigning the seat in front of me because I'm like, damn, this seat sucks.
Yes.
I'm like,
It's like a disease. It's like a sickness.
Yes, I say design is a genetic disorder, and I got it from my dad. My dad, people hate the story, but it's the epitome of how the design brain works. On his deathbed in the hospital, he's looking around and he said to me, you and I could design every single thing in this room better than it is now. That was one of the last things he said.
And that's a cool thing to say.
It's a cool thing to say, but it is. I really wanted to get like a shirt. Is like, design is a genetic disorder. Like,
I want you to talk to my wife because she thinks I'm the biggest asshole in the world because I can't check out at a store because I get mad at the POS system. I can't turn Netflix on because I'm yelling at Netflix. I had, like Tony was saying, I had to name my GPTs just so I could cuss at it because I wanted to know who I was bossing around and talking shit to.
But you know what, and what's interesting is that we see the capability for design everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a physical product, whether it's a flow, whether it's a damn door going into a building with the same handles on both sides, right?
Right.
It's like, that's the most simplest thing.
preach.
But it's kind of interesting because I not at IBM, but at a previous company, is like I hired a person that came fresh out of college, wanted to be a designer. I said, I'll give you an opportunity. And I gave her the advice that somebody gave me one time. I was like, look, be a dry sponge, right? Around everybody around you, just absorb, ask questions, think about the question you're going to answer, right? First, in the right context, but be a dry sponge, right? And then I asked her, I was like, hey, when you leave here, like on your way home, what are you thinking about design related? Like on your way in, what are you thinking about design related? I said, it doesn't have to be anything. You could be out walking at the park and see bees, or you could see whatever, right? You just kind of see design in everything. And she was like, yeah, I don't. And I was like, what? Right? And it was like, no, it was interesting because to your point, Ann, is like a lot of juniors now, and I think it's the ones that, hey, I can get $100,000 a year job, I can go to a boot camp in 18 weeks. They see it as a thing to do between 9 to 5, and it's like, and it turns on and it turns off, and that's what I do, and I don't think about it any other time. And I've literally had people, I don't think about it any other time, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, how can you not do that?
I don't know how to do. Yeah,
design everywhere.
Exactly.
Because I think those people look at it like a job. They look at it like a vocation and not like who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
And to what you were just saying, and to really piggyback on the back of that for just a second, L&D, learning and development, is going to be a really big deal with AI because everything is going to be taught. It's going to be asynchronous. A lot of these giant legacy Ivy League schools, they're going down. Like, people they don't have the same faith in Harvard and Stanford and, that they used to. It's just not the same. And people they don't want to pay, $200,000 for a degree, so all of this stuff is going to be more asynchronous. It's going to be easier to, more accessible to people. And I think AI is really going to be, it's going to be embedded in all of those tools.
Well, actually, it's interesting because there was an executive order that was just signed by that person, but it was the executive order. The executive order was just signed that AI is now going to be a required learning track from kindergarten through graduation in high school.
Wow.
That's actually pretty cool. So,
Well, here's the thing. It was spurred on because China just did it, and China just said, but hey, we can't be behind them, right? But okay, that one thing, literally one minuscule thing in the grand cosmos, I think is kind of cool that kids start learning it now, because they're digital natives now, right?
Right.
It's kind of interesting because you'll get a baby, and we were at dinner last night, and there was like a 2-year-old that was kind of getting out of hand, and it's like, put on a video and hand them your phone, right? You're making that kid a digital native right there. You're going, here you go, right? So it's like to teach kids from kindergarten, although they got rid of the Department of Education, so let's see how that works out. But they literally are going from kindergarten through 12, right through high school, senior. You learn about AI along the way.
I want to like keep going on that point, because like I'll go back to what you said before about pattern recognition. I think that distinguishes for sure from like junior entry level to someone, who is very well seasoned in the design niche. And so I want to connect that to what you just said and talk more about AI in the educational space, right? Because you have someone that's young enough to not attain that critical thinking aspect, the pattern recognition, and they're going to something that's going to tell them the answer right away. And so I want to, like ask the team what you think about the ethical implications of that. And if we're raising a society that's higher on the intellect level, different on the intellect level, or perhaps lower due to information just being like at our fingertips. We don't have to work at it, right? Like someone that's using ChatGPT versus really being, like everything's a product. How can I fix everything? Being in Photoshop, doing things manually.
We're all going to become those people in Wall-E, right?
I was about to say, big fat that's riding around in the lazy boy chair.
Here's the thing, right? In my opinion, it's not going to be kind of one or the other. Thinking is going to change, right? And what I mean by that is an example. I would think it'd be really cool almost to try and build now that it's like, okay, if your kid goes to kindergarten, that's when they get their first AI assistant. And as they grow up, the AI assistant grows with them, right? So it has almost a life history. So from cradle to grave, this AI is with them through the entire time of their lifetime, right? So it knows about them. It has access to medical records. It has access to HIPAA stuff, right? So it knows about them, right, as a human being. Oh, remember when you were 4 and you fell down and this happened? Or, hey, remember your birthday party because whatever, right? So instead of them just learning about AI, is like give them an AI that grows with them as they go through school, right?
Oh, I love that.
And then even after they graduate, so they grow together, right? So I know it's almost like purposely like you make the AI a little bit smarter than them. They're in kindergarten. The AI is a 5-year-old, and it keeps kind of in pace right in front of them. So, but I think that it's interesting because it's like I can write cursive, right? Thomas can write cursive, right? How many people can still write cursive? Not many, right? Because it's like, well, it's not needed anymore, right? I asked my 16-year-old something, and he's just like, hold on, and whips out his phone, and he's like, blah, 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 right? But my kids were also homeschooled, so we still taught them geometry and still taught them everything else. So it's like the base fundamentals are there, but it's kind of like, do you have to use it all the time? No, it's kind of funny because my graduating requirement for high school is Greek mythology. That is so ingrained in my noggin that I still have it there but I'm like, but I never use it, but it's just useless information that I had to learn.
Filling up your
so it's kind of like, I think
who's teaching you how to think.
I think it's not it's not a one or the or are we going to lose anything? I think the way that we think is going to morph and change over time, right? So it's like it'll free us up from the mundane stuff to hopefully, in my opinion, and I would wish that we dream more and we think more further out, and then we go, hey, I can possibly make that happen by leveraging the technology to help me get there, right?
Oh, I love that.
We're a neurodiverse family, I'll put it that way, and
ADHD.
I know the failings of public school intimately, and I think I have had very similar thoughts where if we could just have an AI tutor who teaches us the way we learn, that in itself, and I think one of the jobs that we probably will see are kind of like AI experts in education, like schools. Every school will probably have their person. Might be another job down the road that exists, but those failings are there are reasons that public school fails when it comes to neurodiverse students, and it's because it's a spectrum for a reason. The needs are wildly different from child to child. You would need a lot of humans to take all that on. But if those kids, people, adults, myself included, could have that perfectly tuned tutor in my pocket, there's a total game changer for being able to learn an education.
Exactly.
Here's the thing. There's 5 people on this call that could actually design and put this together.
Who all have on black shirts because we are all real designers.
I was just thinking about this for leadership as well. So one way that I utilize AI is I write down everything. Like I'm struggling with Bob, I'll write down all the sassy things that Bob has said. I'll, put in my wins, I'll put in my losses, put in like what I do every day. And like every day, 5 minutes, I just literally feed chat any ounce of information about my work, about my character as I possibly can. And then twice a year, I've asked it, what are the 10 things that I'm struggling with? What are the 10 things that I'm winning at? How can I be better? And like help me understand. So the prompt here is, what are the 10 items that are blind spots for me from all the information that I've given you? And I love what you said, Tony, about, because sometimes chat is just a little bit too intelligent. And so if it can meet me just like up here, like someone that's like an actual human, perhaps my manager, and give me that feedback, like that would just be amazing. And I wish more institutions utilize something like this.
You know what, Anais, you need to go to plaud.com and you need to get a plaud, Plaud. It's a little pendant that you can wear around you, or you can clip on your like lapel or your clothes.
Okay.
That would massively help you, because throughout the day, as you talk, it records, but it also, you can be in a meeting and it records and it'll summarize and everything else. You would love that. That would help you a lot, because it would just be doing it for you there. And then it can take all of that and then export it out. So that you need that.
I actually did something, I did like a talk space thing because I work in behavioral health. So I did a talk space meet and I recorded our conversation, and then I took like all of the like the transcribed recording, put it in chat, and I asked it for like feedback, like things that I could do on my own. And it just did such a good job. And again, it was less judgy and more helpful.
So, okay, see, so at that point, it's kind of what I was talking to earlier, where it was like, if you could do voice, like say with Sesame, right? And it had what felt like empathy, and you're talking into the ether, there's a portion where mentally you're like, this thing's not going to judge me. Even if they're like, the best therapist in the world is like, hey, I'm never going to judge you. It's a safe space. But at the same token, when a human to a human, you're like, nah, I'm going to say something freaky, and you're going to twitch your head, and you're like, you judged me, right? So at that point, it's like you're just talking to the ether. But if you can hear that voice back, it's like that's what's going to actually kind of make you feel better, right? It's kind of funny, right? Can a voice simply just talk you off the ledge, right? Can a voice, if you're having a bad day, if somebody was to pick up the phone and call and just sit there and say, hey, I'm just having a really bad time right now, can we just talk? And the voice sounded very empathetic, and it was talking, and it'd be like, hey, just letting you know, I'm not a real person, but I will listen, I will talk, blah, 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 blah. They feel like they're just talking out in the open, right? And not to a wall, because there's a response. So it's kind of like, I think that can help a lot of people in one way or another. It's like, and you mentioned neurodivergent, right? It's like, I got diagnosed with ADHD at 49, right? My wife, honestly, at our home is the only neurotypical person in the house. And we even think she's on the spectrum in one way or another, right? So it's like everybody else's ADHD. My time at he was 16, now he's 20, also got diagnosed with me, right? So it's kind of interesting because we pulled him out of school because for me going through school, and it's ironic because I went to Stanford. I basically collected out of high school classes and was able to go to Stanford, and I graduated high school and college in the same 4 years. So I had a dual enrollment. But the thing that's interesting is that for me, school was like a freight train, right? And it was like standard public school. It's a freight train. It's carrying cars, and it's going to barrel through whatever it is, and it's just going to freaking keep going. And I was the kid that was running behind it while other people were, in some cases, were not even holding their hands out to say, hey, jump on board. But it was like, I see the train and it's literally just out in front of me. And the more that I couldn't grasp it, the further that it got away. Right. So it's like with my son, when he was literally after his first year in kindergarten, we were like, dude, we're going to homeschool you. Right. We graduated him early out of high school because he was able to get done early. The 16-year-old is going to be done with high school in like June of this year. Right. So it's just because we've empowered them to learn the way that they want to learn. But I really think, and it's kind of funny, and the way my brain works as well, and you probably know this, is like I can come up with an idea or thought like on the fly. So it's like I just thought about this. I'm like, yeah, wouldn't that be really cool that to come together and build a technology that gave you an AI assistant that when you first started in school, that it learned as, you know, it could be the PhD if needed, but if not, it was just kind of right there with you. It could be the friend to talk to you in the dark. It could be the friend when, hey, there's a monster under my bed, right? And it was like, no, there's no monsters, right? Blah, 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 blah. So it's almost like it's like that movie It, right? It's almost like that invisible buddy that is always kind of there that grows up with you, but then when you become an adult, doesn't go away. Because now it has a life history of you growing up, right? And then as you become, you know, kind of further. What's interesting is that with voice, and I don't know if you ever thought about, like my mom passed away March of last year. And when I would go and drive to Costco, which is about 12 miles from me, is I would actually call my mom. Hey, mom, what's going on? How's your day? Sometimes just call and say, I loved you. When I heard Sesame, I was like, you know, it'd be really interesting. And I know this is now talking about Anais ethics, right? Would it be interesting to take 30 minutes to an hour of my mom's voice, clone my mom's voice, have an LLM basically use the back end almost somewhat think, right? Air quotes. And then to be able for me to pick up the phone and of course using Twilio and still call my mom and hear her voice as if I was still going to the store.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm glad you said that. There was actually someone presenting at the last Figma conference and they were trying this out. And it's a cool concept because like I've had moments of grief where I'm just like, man, that would just be incredible to like hear that person's voice again. And they did that. They replicated like a grandparent. And in the usability testing, what had happened was this person could not, it was a little boy, and basically like he could not go through the stages of grief.
Because
You stop.
Because like you are still communicating with someone that is no longer here.
Yeah.
And so
I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
Personally. But everybody's free to
11 Labs
Yeah.
and Hume. There's a couple of companies that are doing that.
Yeah.
They're trying, but it was interesting because I was like, you know, hey, if I could pick now for me as an adult, I know it's not right, but if I could call up, and it was interesting because I went out to Piper, ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, Piper, how do we make this happen? Oh, if you could record this amount of time, what would be the technology to make it happen? So I leverage her as a research assistant, right? Hey, how would we pull this together? What would we have to do? Oh, record 30 minutes, 45 minutes of her voice. If there's any let's use RAG if there's anything that she's written or anything else, so we can kind of try and establish personality and stuff like that. So then it's kind of like, how do you wrap the experience around it? How do you put it in front of people, right? From that kind of stuff. So
I guess my next like topic that I would love to dive in would be, we were just talking about this before y'all hopped on, but having AI that's not going to take your bullshit. So for example, right? Like if you have someone that's growing up, they're talking to the AI and the AI either reinforces that negative behavior or tells them that they're right, like is way too nice to them. Whilst in the real world, you have to communicate with multidisciplinary personalities that are not always favorable. And so, yeah, I just want to, I guess, talk more about how you can still, like, is this type of AI going to instill values that everybody's going to communicate a certain way and be respectful and empathetic? Or is it going to create folks that are going to be in their 20s and completely allergic to having, political debates?
I don't think it's there yet, right? And I don't think the experiences are there yet. In my opinion, is that looking at it is kind of ironic, is that AI itself doesn't, it looks for the next token in the string, right? So it's kind of just like when you go down a path, it wants to keep going down that same path, right? So it looks for the next thing and it'll kind of tease it up. That's how it responds so quickly. When you suddenly pivot, it takes not a second, but it takes like, it's like, oh, that's not the next path. Okay, we're going over here now, right? I don't think on its own it kind of has the capability of kind of going on multiple paths like we do, right?
Not
So it's
yet.
kind of not. Well, I'm saying not yet. When it does, that will be the interesting thing that it'll be able to do, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like the scariest part about that, like super intelligent AI, where it creates its own neural networks without the help of a human. And so it's an interesting time because right now, like we are able to kind of like steer the ship. Where does it go? What answers I get? Kind of like with Google, right? If I ask Google, hey, like, is Dr. Pepper good for me? Comes up with 10 reasons it's good for me. If I say, is Dr. Pepper bad for me? Comes up with 10 reasons it's bad for me. And I'm still in control of that biased narrative. Whereas the experts are saying by 2027, by 2030, super intelligence and AI that can basically create its own neural pathways and feed itself the information it needs to make executive decisions. They're saying that the dumbest AI in 2030 will be billion-fold smarter than the average human. And so, like, sometimes I feel like we're just, I don't want to say disillusioned, but we're like, oh, right, it's going slow. But for me, it's like the ship has already like left. The train has left the station. And now it's like, how do we respond to this?
Well, it's interesting is I think almost like it should be a requirement that everybody in technology watch every season of Black Mirror, and then they also watch every season of Love and Robots, right?
I love both of those.
Love that, yeah.
Because they pose, it's kind of interesting. You see the technology and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
But then they also pose fundamental, well, is it really cool, right?
Yeah,
So it's
the
like,
negative side.
when I watch them as a technology guy, it makes you think, right? As an example, there was one about
The one with Rashida Jones.
well, there was one, I want to say is or season 2, episode 3 or whatever, where it was like she wanted to go buy a house in a certain community and she had to have certain level credit or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that one.
Okay, so here's funny. I'm sitting on the couch and as a UX guy, I'm like, challenge accepted. I could design every way around that. And I did. I designed a complete solution of how you would make that work, how you'd monetize it, how it'd be a service and everything else, and why it would. And then all the negatives, I saw those as challenge accepted. So I designed around all of those bad things, right? So it's kind of like, could something like that that's completely fictional to pose something as a designer, as a UX person at the time, AI wasn't around, but could I take that now and build that using AI? Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like, but you need to look at those and go, hey, because I can do it, should I do it? Right. And it's like, as an example, my 16-year-old, we're riding in the car one day. He was 15. Yeah, 15. He goes, hey, Dad, there's the 3 laws of robotics. And I go, yeah. He goes, are there the laws of AI? And I was like, not that I know of, dude. I'm like, there isn't anything.
And who writes them?
Well, what's
Yeah.
interesting is I actually asked Piper to write the laws of AI just to see what she would write, because in a sense, she's writing what would mitigate herself, right? And
Yeah.
what's interesting is that, and I don't know why more people don't do this, when they're using ChatGPT, you can tell it how to respond to you. You can give it rules to follow,
Oh,
right?
right.
Most
Right.
people just sit there and
Yeah.
go, "Oh, okay, just use it, right?" And it's like,
Right.
no, I told her, look, if I come to you with an idea or a concept and it's kind of crazy or it's way out of there, literally don't please me. Don't try and just tell me it's awesome. Come back and go, no, it's not a good idea, and here's why. Like, literally tell me why it's not a good idea. Like,
Right.
be the voice of reason. Just don't please me. And ever since I did that, she does that. So she answers more what I would say is kind of to Anais, like more naturally, right? Where it's just like, it's just not there to please me with every dumb idea that I might come to her with. But it's like, yeah, hey, Tony, here's why you might not want to do that, or it might be technically challenging, or monetization might be really difficult, or whatever, right? So it's that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
sorry,
I
Ann, we kind
love
of took over your
It's okay.
meeting.
It's fine. No, we have 5 minutes left, and I want to do a quick round robin, keeping in mind that a lot of our listeners are people trying to get jobs, trying to pivot, trying to get those skills that pay the bills. And I never feel kind of finished with a meeting until I have some action items. So I would like each of you to give listeners a couple of action items to help them kind of get the skills that pay the bills and just level up and get down the path of working. Anais, you want to go first?
The first thing that comes to my mind is the soft skills, especially with influence and persuasion. It is extremely hard. And I mean, something that I'm working with my executive presence. But I think that will help with anything that you do, whether it's, pushing the product forward for like your users, or, those morality clauses where just because we can do it, should we? And being able to articulate that in a way that, your stakeholders, the folks with the purse strings, are able to, take what you're saying, and you can, create good products. So yeah, I think honestly, sometimes I wish I would have taken a sales class.
If you just because you can design it doesn't mean you can sell it.
Right, exactly. And you need to sell it, to the stakeholders first, because you have an awesome product and they might never get out to your users if you don't know how to sell it in the first place.
Ready for me?
Nice point.
Yeah, go. Action items, go.
Action items. Start where you are. If you're not currently using some type of AI tools, go read about the top 3 or 4 of them, and just start dipping your toe in and start playing with it in the context of whatever your industry is. So you're in automotive, healthcare, retail, fintech, banking. Go look at what's going on in those spaces, and where AI and conversational and voice and ML, natural language processing, are being used, and how they're being used. And for the love of God, just remember that all of our jobs, in any business, are to drive the business and steer the brand. And with regards to AI in the future, be an unabashed hope dealer. Stop saying that the sky is falling and everything's dying, and that AI is taking all our jobs, and like it's old, it's boring, and it's turning LinkedIn into just this toxic, boring crybaby pool of dingalings.
Said.
So mine.
Go ahead, Tony.
So
Tell
mine.
those to your therapist instead of LinkedIn.
So mine is really kind of, to Thomas's point, is kind of 2 things. One is, don't let FUD or fear, uncertainty, and doubt kind of drive you, right? Is kind of just lean into it. Honestly, is that, and I'm kind of a big believer in this. I'm like, look, if you're still playing in Figma, you're already, it's not that you're done, but you better get out of it really quick, because that won't matter before too long, right?
Don't tell them.
Lean into AI and how AI can amplify what you do as a designer, right? It's the other person sitting next to you that you can help leverage. The other thing is, look at not where things are right now, if you're still following people that are like, oh, Figma, learn how to do this, and
name your layers.
It's
Don't
like
name your layers.
You need to look like 2, 3, 4, or 5 years down the road and see where you possibly things are going to land. Because in my career, if I thought something was going to land 4 years away, but I started working on it now, by the time everybody caught up to me, I was a subject matter expert, right?
And that's why I have a job right now.
Right. So it's like, think of not what you're doing right now or where the trends or where industry or business is going right now, but where it's going to go 5 years from now, and then try and get ahead of it. So once it lands there, you're the SME and they're coming to you. To Anne's point, they're calling her.
That's beautiful and brilliant. I love that.
Great points, everyone. Thank you. I wrote down all of them.
And everybody out there, Mahnaz needs a job, and she needs one soon. So let's help my girl any way we can. All right, this was amazing. I can't believe this was. I feel like we have been at this for years instead of just the first episode, and I think that's because you guys are all so awesome and just so deep into the work, and you all truly have the genetic disorder of design in your blood, and just want to thank you for coming. And we want to plug Swarmathon is the third Saturday of every month. That's where we talk about AI for good, and that is Mahnaz's podcast. And join us the last Saturday of every month for Designathon. We will be back. Then we have some great people on the next one, and we will be talking to people who actually have jobs in the AI space and how they got there and how you can get there too, and just try and keep that hope alive. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
You all don't have to hang up.